Right, and I want to thank you for joining us for a session this morning to talk through the System Design and Management program at MIT. My name is Joan Rubin. I'm the Executive Director of the SDM program. And over the next roughly hour, my hope is to walk you through a little bit more of the basics of the program and give you a chance to meet and talk to several of our current students. It's an opportunity to ask questions. Please, as I talk, as our students are sharing some of their experiences, feel free to jump in on the chat. Feel free to raise your hand. We will answer the questions as quickly as we can. And we've got a couple of folks from the SDM staff and faculty side that are listening in today and are going to help with those questions and making sure that we've got as much information as we can for you to be able to assess whether SDM is the right program for you. So let's jump in. If I can get my computer working properly. So SDM is the System Design and Management program. It's a master's degree program here at MIT. It's been a program for close to 30 years now. We are a professional master's degree, and I'll be a little bit careful with how I call that. By professional, there is no doctorate program to follow on. And so this is a terminal degree if you come into the System Design and Management program. That being said, we are one of the few professional programs that does require a research thesis. And so this is an academic journey as well as a professional journey. The end result, the degree that you receive on the other side, is a Master of Science degree in engineering and management. And I'm going to talk a little bit more as we get into this about why we're specific about engineering and management as opposed to an engineering management degree, and there is a difference. SDM started as a partnership. Companies came to us back in the early 90s and talked about this challenge that they were facing with complexity in product design and development, in process design. If we went back, if you look back 50 or 60 years, when you started to look at a design of a product or a technology, you could really look at it in isolation and develop it. And what became clear, and especially for companies like aerospace and automotive and heavy equipment, is that if you weren't thinking about how systems interacted, your ability to design an optimal solution was not going to be there. You couldn't design individual components and expect that the combination, that system, was going to be the best product that you could develop. And so industry came to us and said, can you help us train and educate our future leaders about system skills, thinking about the entirety, thinking about it from a holistic perspective, as opposed from the component view. And so the goal of this program was to develop system level expertise, expand skills in the next generation of leaders to manage large-scale complex projects, to educate the future folks that were going to lead technical organizations. And also, this is one of the first programs here at MIT that allow students to be able to look at this from more of a career-compatible perspective. So instead of necessarily leaving your job and coming to campus for 2 full years, it looked at trying to figure out how do we meet students where they're at. So we call this MIT's first degree granting distance education program, although there's a big caveat on the idea of distance education here. MIT does believe, and I firmly believe as well, is that there's certain aspects of being here on campus with the ecosystem, with the things that are happening on campus that are absolutely essential as part of your degree. So in the context of our program, distance education means that you can complete all but 1 semester at remote. You will be required to come to campus for roughly 13 weeks at some point in your degree program to be able to spend 1 semester here in residence at MIT. The rest of the program can be done at a distance. Let me see if I can get myself moving here. I want to play a short video here. And this is Marcel Durenberger. It's a student who graduated last spring. But I think Marcel gives a really strong perspective on what it means to be a student here in systems and what do systems mean. And so I'm going to play this very short clip.
As an engineer, I'm trained to be a problem solver. And now I've learned a new way to solve problems, and it's pretty fun. It's almost like a puzzle with strings, because if you move the piece that's over in this corner, it may pull the piece that's in this other corner, and you had no idea they were connected. And that's the beauty of systems, to understand these relationships between all these pieces. My name is Marcel Durenberger, and I'm a third-year SDM, which is System Design and Management master student at MIT. System design and management is a blend of engineering and management. So we split our credits between the engineering school and the management school. It is a bit more engineering heavy, and we do have business represented as well, but we also have doctors that come in. We have geologists that come in, people from energy related industries. We have consumer products, we have automotive, we have aerospace, we have military. We really have a bit of everything. And I think that also is a huge part of SDM, to have that diversity of thought, and you learn how to adapt to your different groups, adapt to different cultures. You have people in different time zones, so you're learning how to navigate that as well. And you can do it in so many different ways. There are people who come in as sponsored from their companies and do it very quickly. There are people who are sponsored who do it in a pretty standard 1.5 to 2 years. There's a group of people who do remote with clauses to get on campus on certain times. And then you have the part-time folks. I was able to blend starting part-time and then going full-time. There are a few of us who do that. So core is the first year for every system design and management student. So in the fall, you're all learning a common language, the core foundation of what systems thinking is. System architecture usually leads the front, and then you have system engineering, and then you have project management. And you're applying these to pretty simple problems. So at first in the fall, you're like, okay, we're getting this new language, we're seeing how it applies, but these problems don't seem particularly complex. And that's the point, because you need to build on it. So what happens is you have a winter session, 1 week in January, where everyone comes on campus and you are all in a room, you're doing workshops, and you actually get pitched projects from 40 plus sponsors. And these projects have all been filtered by the program to really help you practice all the knowledge you now have. And then you go into the spring semester and you apply it to a much more complex project. So that complexity builds across the core class, and then it culminates in how do you actually take this method of systems thinking and apply it in your workplace, or however you need to use them. Being a teaching assistant for the core class, it's actually really fun to see other people wrestle with the questions that you wrestled with, and then slowly have the puzzle pieces like click in their heads. The project work brings you closer. The whirlwinds nature of the program brings you closer. And then all of a sudden you have this really special community. I think we come here because we want to do better. We want to elevate something that you think can improve. And this is an opportunity to learn the tools and meet the people that have a similar curiosity and drive to make a difference.
I think sometimes it's better to hear it directly from the mouth of somebody who's experiencing the program. And I really thank Marcel for sitting down and explaining that. So I think it's helpful if you look at what our mission was when we were founded 30 years ago. And I think it still resonates as much today as it did at the founding, which is this is for a program who wants to lead, not leave engineering. And so our focus is on education, obviously, but we're looking at the future generation of leaders, people who are going to run and oversee large technical organizations. And we want to build those skills to be able to architect, engineer, and design complex products and systems. We want you to be the people that understand that complexity, that can ask those challenging questions, that can dig in and understand that work that's being done in the organization, but with that thought and leadership to be able to step back and look at it at a higher level view. We want our graduates to be those grounded senior managers of those organizations. I think it's an interesting statistic that flipped about 7 or 8 years ago now. And if you look at the Fortune 500 companies and you look at who is leading those organizations, up until about, like I said, 7 or 8 years ago, the majority of people had MBAs. Now what you're seeing is that the majority of leaders of large organizations actually have a technical background. And we feel that the blending here of that engineering and management, but that system skill level positions people to be those, as we put it, grounded senior managers of the enterprises. So when you look at where we sit here within this ecosystem, we talk about systems thinking, and I think systems thinking has a little bit of different meaning to different people. But really what we're looking at is this idea of a holistic way of approaching learning, looking at connections, looking at interfaces, understanding how things relate and connect. We also look at the dynamic behavior. Things don't stay static, and looking at how things change as you push and pull certain elements of design. And so our goal is this idea of human connected design. There are two distinct options for the SDM program, and I'm going to spend most of the time today talking specifically about the master's degree program, but I do want to just mention at least briefly here, because for some of you, the certificate program might be a better option for you in terms of career. So we offer a master's degree program, and that is a full Master of Science degree. We also offer a graduate certificate. And the common element between those two programs is this core class sequence. It's a heavy load course that happens in the fall, January, and the spring. And I'll talk a little bit more about details on this in a minute. But that core bridges, and our master's students and our certificate students take that together. Our certificate students do this while they're working full-time. They take that series of courses throughout the year. They finish with a capstone project in their industry, in their company, to wrap up the graduate certificate. They earn 36 units of MIT graduate credit, and that credit is transferable into the master's program if at some point down the road they want to pursue the master's program. The master's also uses that same core foundation class, but it builds on it with both management and engineering electives. Because it's a joint program between the School of Engineering and the Sloan School of Management, it's expected that students will balance their classes and do an equal number of courses at Sloan and at the School of Engineering. For a master's degree student, on top of those elective courses is the thesis. And so the thesis brings it together. And I'll talk a little bit more about core as we dig into the curriculum, but I want to talk about where we sit at MIT. And, we firmly believe that we sit at the intersection. And so if you look at what does that mean? What does it mean to be part of both of these schools? So it means that you are a student of the Sloan School, you are a student of the School of Engineering, and that means you have access to the classes that are available in both places. There is research, there's activities, there's clubs, there are chances to get involved in labs and work with faculty. There's opportunities to become teaching assistants and research assistants. And we look at it, and because you're a student of both schools, of both areas of MIT, you have full access to the educational opportunities in both Sloan and the School of Engineering. On the bottom part of this here is that we also understand that the vast majority of you are going to step back into jobs and careers in industry. And so we feel it's absolutely essential to bring that real world element, both in terms of what's being taught in the classroom, but also in terms of things like tech treks, a chance to go visit companies, bringing in thought leaders. We have a systems thinking seminar where we bring back in leaders in industry to come talk about their experiences and how they are shaping that next generation of where technology is going. MIT also has an enormous ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship. In fact, where we sit here at MIT, we sit on the east side of campus, and on the first floor of our building is the Martin Center for Entrepreneurship. And Martin Center is a drop-in. People can become involved and participate in the Martin Center activities if they've got an idea or want to start something. There is funding available at MIT. In addition to the typical 100K competition, there's something called sandbox funding. And if you have an idea for a startup and you need some funding to help you get there, this is I'll call it small dollar funding, but these may be in the 5 or 10,000, say you need to develop a prototype to pitch. Sandbox, if you create a compelling rationale, Sandbox will help fund some of those critical pieces that are going to help you get into that innovation ecosystem. And so everything here at MIT, and I think what I want to emphasize here on this picture is everything here at MIT essentially is open to you. Who is our students? Where do they come from? And so we are not a typical engineering grad program where students come straight out from undergrad and come into the program. We believe that it's important to have an understanding of how problems work in the real world before stepping in here. And so we require students to have a minimum of 5 years of experience before joining. We changed that to 3 years if you come in with a advanced degree already. On average, our students have about 8 to 10 years of professional experience, and they come from all kinds of industries, and that's actually intentional. It's thoughtful from us because our belief is that you learn more, as much, if not more, from the person sitting next to you in the class, the person that's on your team, the person that you are working problems with as you do from the faculty members. About half of our students carry either partial or full support from their company. It's not a requirement, and it's actually not a factor that we look at in admissions. It's just that a lot of times in this mid-career phase, companies are interested in retaining their top talent. And so there has been support from companies to come. We live here in Kendall Square in Cambridge in a hub of innovation startups, technology companies. If I look out my window right in front of me, I've got kind of Microsoft, there's Takata, Pharmaceuticals, Moderna, Google. All of this is within a couple of blocks here of the MIT campus. And so we have a number of students that are commuters. They are working full-time here somewhere in the Boston area, and they come to class here on campus, but they continue to work as they go through. About half of our students are from the US. It means that the other half are from all over the globe. And again, that's an important factor for us. And if you take a look at where people come from and you recognize that half from the US means we've got a big blue spot there, we do have representation of students from around the globe. It varies a little bit from year to year, but we see industry is global, teams are global in companies. It's important for people to understand and understand cultural differences and working on a global scale while they're here at MIT. In terms of background, and we get a question as
It was
people
just then talking to him and Paul Bontrager. Did you know Paul Bontrager Campbell?
Sorry, thank you. We have people who come in with their highest degree being a bachelor's degree, and in fact, that's the majority of our students. But we also have a good number that already hold a master's degree, and we also have a fair number that come in that already hold either a PhD or an MD, in some cases a law degree. And I think the common thread is that they've hit a point in their career where they recognize that in order to advance, they need some of these skills to be able to look at larger scale projects and programs. And so even though they may be a technical expert in their area, that they're at a point where they need some of that broader education. So I talked a bit about people coming from different industries. I got on here both our certificate and our master's students because it's an important diversity in the classroom. And you'll see there's a lot of overlap, and some of these are difficult to identify whether something from e-commerce also might roll into healthcare. There's a lot of overlap in some of these areas, but we really do try in the admissions process to make sure that we have diversity in the classroom so that there's diversity of backgrounds and thought. So I want to dig a little bit more deeply into the curriculum itself. So I talked about the core. The core is a full year course. It starts in the fall. MIT has a January term, also called independent activities period. And then spring semester starts essentially February 1st and runs through the spring. And so the core class runs through the entire academic year. It's a 15 credit unit per semester. And I know that in many cases, MIT's credits are different from what you might have seen as an undergrad. I know in many schools, you have a 3 or 4 unit class. MIT's credit system reflects the number of hours you're expected to spend on a class during that semester. So a 15 credit class means that you're going to spend roughly 15 hours a week on the core. So if you're looking at doing this while you're working, just consider what that means in terms of time commitment in the classroom. Our goal is to put together this idea of a broad and deep systems education. And you heard from Marcel some of this overlap between learning the concepts, learning the technologies, and then digging in and understanding how to apply it. And so that's the focus on our core. It's a combination. It's not just lecture. It's a combination of in-class discussions. We bring in outside experts in their fields to talk to the class. There's a good number of team projects. There's also individual assignments. And so there's opportunities to learn, I think, in a way that's very similar to what you would do in a work environment. And then the culmination of the class is a semester-long integrative team project. So while you're still learning in lecture, you're applying what you're learning on this semester-long course or semester-long project that comes from real-world problems that industry pitches and brings in. I'm going to play one more video that's just a couple minutes long again. And in this case, you're going to hear from Dr. Brian Mosier. Dr. Mosier is the academic director for SDM. He's the one that really has been responsible for revolutionizing our core class and really thinking about how do we make sure people are learning in a way that's going to be useful and applicable.
Today, being an engineer is very exciting. We're going through an energy transition. We have new computation, new classes of automation and robotics. Hardware and software are back. At the same time, what's happening in medicine, precision agriculture, carbon reduction. All these transitions are happening, which means that there's so many new combinations, new opportunities that rising engineers can address. SDM is a program in the graduate schools of engineering and the Sloan School of Management at MIT that offers both a master's degree in engineering and management, as well as a certificate in the same. Our students are at mid-career. We have students from agriculture, from energy, biotech, health, aerospace, from automotive, from governments and military in one classroom. If we looked at curriculum a century ago, each of the separate disciplines was establishing their own first laws and their own disciplinary principles. Today, the engineering problems we're working on are connected. That is, we can't separate the subsystem we're working on from the system it connects to. And that connected system lives in an ecosystem that includes other systems. So an engineering leader now not only must help coordinate and make trades amongst the engineering disciplines, but we must be capable of also interacting, having dialogue, having conversations with stakeholders, economists, regulators, lawyers, sociologists, ethnographers. So that becomes a central part of what an engineering leader for complex systems problems must deal with. But let's start with the core, because the core is really unique. We teach this class over 9 months. With every few weeks, we spiral through system architecture, system engineering, and project management. These are 3 capabilities that an engineering leader, especially for complex modern projects, has to have. Students are involved in hundreds of hours of activity, including 300 hours of team-based projects. We invite outside organizations, both companies and governments, to propose a problem. Students begin by simply trying to frame the problem. They then take that and understand it and decompose that system and understand how it might perform and function with different options and different approaches. And then they also think about what it means to then take this proposed system into the real world. The significant peer learning. Then there's also now a new vocabulary, a new way of seeing the world as systems, and a whole toolkit of methods that people learn. After the core, there are foundation classes tied to systems, both in engineering and in management. It's also now important, heading towards a thesis, to explore. While at MIT, it's such an amazing place. It's like being a kid in a candy store. There's so many interesting classes, interesting activities. And so the electives give one a chance to shape one's own degree. And thesis is an important ultimate expression of the journey they've been on as a student, advised by a faculty member or a professional researcher. And typically it's a one-on-one dialogue over at least 6 months. What's always amazing to me is to see how a student evolves leading up to the topic in their thesis, which could be groundbreaking, maybe something they could never have anticipated when they entered. And an important part of the experience in being here at MIT is permitting that discovery, being open-minded, being diligent, interacting a ton, then allowing for the discovery and the shaping, whether it's a new technique, a new method, a new company that might emerge from the time period.
So to sum up what Brian talked about, just in terms of the requirements. So the bottom of this pyramid here is the integrated core. The students are required to take the integrated core in their first year and take it sequentially, because it does build, and we do have teams and projects that span semesters. On top of that, we ask students to take what we call depth classes. On the engineering side, a depth class takes a concept that's introduced in the core and allows you to dig deeper into that area. So taking something in the systems realm and going a little bit further. 12 units in engineering is typically a single engineering class. Similarly, on the management side, we ask that you take these depth classes. And in most cases, the depth class on the management side reflects essentially a core foundational area in management. And so you can think of it as part of what would be a normal MBA core is what we're asking you to take. But 12 units in management is typically 2 classes. And so instead of taking the full management MBA core, you're taking a couple of classes in that area in management. And then on top of that, you're required to take a minimum of 15 units in engineering and 15 units in management. And those are truly electives. We open up the full catalog almost exclusively across MIT and allow you to be able to take electives in an area that's going to complement gaps and needs in your own background. And so somebody may come in having come out of the healthcare industry, and they really want to understand finance and leading people. And so that may be the areas that they dig into on the management side in their electives, but they're very personal, and it really depends on individual needs and direction they're taking in their career. Finally, at the top of all of this, as Brian talked about in that video, is the thesis. And so there's a 24-unit thesis that's required. And we recommend students spread it over a couple of semesters. It just allows you to dig in and understand and be able to work on it. But 24 units means it's the equivalent of 24 hours of work over a single semester. If you spread it over a longer period of time, it's just, it's the equivalent amount of work. As I mentioned on that last slide, there are a lot of choices here. And so in terms of management foundation and engineering depth, you're asked to take 1 engineering class, potentially 2 in the management side, but there are, on the foundation and depth side, there's roughly 10 to 15, in some cases more, classes that you can pick from. So we're not restricting you and saying, here's the class you have to take, but we're saying, here's the classes you have to choose from. And then when you talk electives and you look at the catalog here at MIT, for those of you that may have explored it, on the management side, there's over 100 electives that you can pick from. On the engineering side, because you can take it in any one of the disciplines of engineering here at MIT, there are literally hundreds. And so it's a matter of individual work with your advisor to be able to identify the courses that make sense for you, that you carry enough of the background to be able to cover the prerequisites. And then you're allowed to dig in the areas that matter to you. The only restriction in terms of overall building this program is that because we are a joint program, because we are joint between engineering and management, at the end of the program, you have to balance your units. You can't come in and say, I really want to dig into what's going on in the ML AI area, and I just want all my classes in computer science. Or I don't have enough engineering management background. I want to take the equivalent of an MBA program. You have to balance. And so if you take additional courses on one side, the expectation is you'll take additional courses on the other side as well. We do have some flexible options here. Everybody will come in as a cohort and you will go through the core together, but then people have different pathways through. So the most common is on campus full-time, and about 50 to 60% of our students they come as a full-time student and they progress through the pathway as an on-campus full-time student. We have the local commuters that I talked about that live somewhere here in the Boston area, and that's typically about 20 to 30% of our students, and they come on campus for class, and then they go back and typically are working through the program. We also do have the distance students, and the distance students, most will take the first year at a distance. They'll take the core only during their first year. And then during their second year, they'll look and try and figure out which semester they can come to campus and be here for 13 weeks. They take the majority of their courses. There's only a handful here at MIT that are offered at a distance. So beyond the core, most of your classes have to happen here on campus, and that's done during your on-campus semester. And then oftentimes that other semester during the second year is work on thesis, plus maybe one class at a distance just to reduce that load. And so it balances out. Our distance students often take anywhere from 24 to 36 months, just because if you're taking a lower course load while you're working, it makes sense to be balancing that out. In terms of the certificate, the piece that I want to mention is that your certificate students are taking the core with our master's students. Our distance delivery is synchronous. By synchronous, it means that you are expected to be in class when class is happening. So even though it's online, you're logging in during class hours. Class hours for the core are 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. East Coast time on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then an hour of recitation on Tuesday, Thursday in those same windows. And so that's the piece you'd have to look at to be able to understand. We do record everything. It's captured. All of those videos are available very shortly after class ends, but the expectation is that students are in class because part of the class process is collaborative working in the class setting. I talked already that students who are at a distance are required to be here for a single semester. And I want to emphasize there is no option for a completely distance degree. You have to be at MIT for at least some point in your degree. I talked about the fact that there are a couple of classes that are available at a distance. Sloan does not have distance classes. So all of your classes through the business school have to be done while you're on campus. And most of the engineering courses, there are a few that are engineering management specific that we have at a distance, but most of your engineering courses also must be taken on campus. So if people come, they're obviously looking at outcomes. And
Sorry,
I
John,
think
could we ask a question?
I'm going to hold the questions
Sure.
until the end, but please raise your hand and I'll grab that as soon as we get
Sure,
done with the presentation, which will just be a couple more minutes. So in terms of what does it look like on the other side? This is the data from the most recent employment report. So these are folks that graduated between January and December of last year. We look at 6 months after they've graduated as the way to assess what they've got. We have had, for as long as I've been here, which is 14 years, 100% employment afterwards. On average, the salary increase that students have seen is about 70%. And so you'll get a little bit of an idea with the ranges up there in the top right at starting salaries versus ending salaries. We see a little bit of a flux in terms of job locations. The last couple of years, there's been a bit of a pullback in the Bay Area. And so we've seen more students getting jobs here in the Northeast. We also have seen more people moving to Europe and other places, but the job salary changes have been solid for students that have come in. These are sampling of companies that have hired students. We have what we view as career services, not career placement. And the difference there is that we have a dedicated career services director that will help manage you through your process, but the job search process is yours. And so she's here for resources, support, to help you source jobs, to help you get into the process. But it is expected that students will be active partners in the job process. And then this is a collection of job titles of our students that have taken their next job out. We didn't do any culling. We didn't try to make it look good in terms of what it is. This is literally the job titles that our students have taken over the last few years. All of the information on careers is on our website. So if you want to dig in a little bit more, there's more information there. So if we look, this is my last slide here. If you look beyond the core and the classes in the actual educational process here, there's a lot of effort to try and make sure that we keep you connected to what's happening out in the real world and industry. There is that core course team project. And in that case, we invite in 20 or 30 companies to pitch projects. You get to sit in the audience, listen to the pitch, and make the decision about which projects you want to work on. And we do a little bit of matching, so it's not 100% guaranteed, but we match you with the project you're interested in being involved in. We do site visits. This past year, we did a tech trek to the San Francisco Bay Area and got a chance to see 9 top companies in the Bay Area, but we also went to Japan through Innovation Discovery Japan. And we also brought students to the Netherlands on a tech trek to Europe just to understand a little bit about challenges that are facing these companies in these areas and how companies are addressing them. We bring in people from industry for guest lectures and talks. We do local treks here in the Boston area. We have companies that sponsor research. We have companies that sponsor students. I think what I want to emphasize here is that we are committed to making sure that your education is relevant to allow you to step back in and be effective in your next job. With that, I'm going to turn this over we have 3 students that have joined us today, and I want them to give a little bit of their own background, share a little bit of their experiences here at MIT, and then we'll open it up for questions. And I'm happy to answer questions, but I would love to have you also guide some of the questions to the students because they've lived through the process and they can share in their own words how they've approached this, how SDM has impacted them. I'll do a quick introduction, then I'm going to ask the students to actually self-introduce and just talk a little bit about your background. So today we have Hiro, Mikhail, and Martina. And Hiro, if you don't mind starting and just giving a quick introduction, that would be excellent.
Yeah, can you hear me well?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, my name is Hiro, second year master degree student at MIT SDM. My background is automotive. I was a mechanical engineer at Toyota in Japan prior to MIT SDM. And over the summer, I was doing strategy at Ford Motor company. My career goal is pivoting strategy or product management role after graduation. So that's me. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Hiro. Mikhail, do you mind giving a quick introduction?
Yes, hi, hello everyone, Michał Dolkowski. So from the background, I am aerospace engineer. So prior to SDM, I spent more than 10 years at Airbus Defense and Space, specifically in space division, also working some high-tech industry. From a graduate perspective, I'm one of the person John mentioned with a little bit more of the degrees, including the PhD. So if you have more questions. In terms of the SDM, I started remotely, so I was working full-time, and I spent my first year while I was in Europe, and I am now a full-time on campus second year. I am also a teaching assistant involved in several clubs, so if you have any questions, feel free. So.
Thank you, Mikhail. And I just saw somebody popped up a question on TARA. So after Martina introduces, it'd be great to have you jump on that one. Martina, do you mind giving a quick introduction?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. Martina Jazuska, SDM. I started in 2021, so I'm coming to the end of my journey. I started remote at a distance, working full-time. My background is chemical engineer undergrad, and I've been at Merck for the last 10 years in operations. So I've definitely taken a little bit longer. The flexibility that Joan mentioned. So if anyone's thinking about doing the program while working, I'm happy to take those types of questions. And what does it look like balancing work, then part-time, and then getting to campus, which was the best part of the program so far.
Thank you, Martina. I would love to open it up to questions at this point, and I did see a question that just came up on TARA, and I know Mikhail just introduced that. So if you don't mind actually asking your question, unmuting and asking your question, we can have that discussion. And Also, feel free to raise hands and we'll go into the other questions as well.
Yes, so the question I had, sorry to interrupt you during your presentation, but it was regarding the assessment. So if we take the option to do it at distance and we're doing it from Europe, let's say, how do we do the exams for the different courses? How does that look like?
Mikhail, do you want to grab that one?
Yes, of course. So I was actually full year in Europe, first year, and usually there's the M core. You will have a lot of assignments. Part of the assignment will be at the beginning of the program, individual, but later on you will work with your team, which is one of the very important elements of the core. But normally the program, you have the assignment, you work on this assignment, and then you have a due date where you have to submit the assignment, and everything is basically coordinated and submitted to the platform. So that's not a problem. It's not you don't have, at least at the SDM course, a kind of the exams where you have to connect and do it exactly during this giving time. So it provides you a lot of flexibility.
Thanks. Martina, do you have any other comments to add? Because you did a lot of this remote as well.
Yeah, no, I think like in terms of the logistics of taking the exams, there's a lot of functionality built in where you're getting timed quizzes depending on the courses that you're taking. Other times it is the assignment, like Michal mentioned, that you're getting it and then you're submitting it. I think the rigor is just the same, and the quizzes online, especially when you're doing in-class questions, you're expected to participate and you're graded on that. So it's not just the final exam, it's how you participate remotely throughout the entire semester that really counts. How you answer questions, how you engage, including then the formal assignments.
Thank you, Martina. Joseph Lanneman, I see that you've got your hand up. Feel free to unmute and ask the question.
Hi, yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Director Rubin, as well as Hiro, Michael, and Martina for being here. Good morning. A question for you all. I know entrepreneurship seems to be something of a priority based on what you've shared today, as well as the course load that's available. I had a question particularly about 15.378, building an entrepreneurial venture, advanced tools and techniques. Could you share any of the projects from the current or prior semesters that were worked on in that class, as well as just another question for that. Were these startups formed by students that connected through SDM, or were they mostly projects that somebody brought in?
So I'm going to throw it over to the students to see if anyone took the class, because there's so much choice in classes. I don't know if that's been part of the pathway for any of the three. So I'll ask, did any of you take that or any entrepreneurship classes here?
I did not.
I have. I mean, I didn't take that class, but I'll wait until the rest says something.
Ignacio, do you actually mind doing a quick introduction? And I actually have you grab that because I don't think Hiro or Michal have taken that.
All right. So welcome. No, not welcome. We're 43 minutes in. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever. My name is Ignacio Vasquez. I am Director for Industry Relations for SDM. I also happen to be an alum. I graduated the program a couple of years ago. And similar to Michal, I started the program when I was working full-time back in Europe. And now they convinced me to stay and stick around. So about that question, I didn't take that class specifically, but there are a number of courses that are organized by the Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship. This is one of them. I think that they even released a new book over the summer. And I took the class that precedes this one. So what I can tell you is the following. The purpose of the Entrepreneurship Center is to develop entrepreneurial skills in students. It is not its goal to start a company. That being said, overachieving as MIT students are, they often do. So what we see during that class is an idea that students might want to explore, which could be something that they are making up on the spot, or maybe it's something that they have already been thinking about, and this gives them the opportunity and the structure and the network to pay serious time and attention to that idea. The projects are defined by the students, and by projects I mean the company ideas, the business models, and they are pitched often in different competitions that happen during the year. That's also how students get funded, and because the Martin Center for Entrepreneurship pays such a strong emphasis on networking, they actually, the students during the class, they are introduced to people with capital or experienced entrepreneurs. So it is not at all a crazy idea, but it actually becomes a real company. And at this point, I have no idea if I answered your question anymore.
I think I
You
can.
did. Thank you.
I can a little bit add to this. So we have some colleagues even from my cohort that were pitching actually 2 weeks ago. One of colleague actually also is progressing on his own startup, which was allowing him also to expand on the knowledge. He takes some additional courses at MIT, which was regarding the operational one. As Ignacio mentioned, there is a lot of opportunities, pitching session. There is also some competitions and conferences. Last week, I am also part of the Sloan Senate. We are discussing well-known 100K competition, which is enabling to pitch, to present your startups, and the main prize is 100K, where you can have it and basically move forward with your idea. And a lot of companies like that were basically also starting and coming here from MIT and further progressing from your work. With one other colleague I mentioned, I can, if you want, type me later on, I can try to connect you, can have more details. But I know that he's also now considering to stay longer and even do his PhD from that. Yeah.
Thank you. Mihail, I'm going to come back to you again, because I know we've had a couple of questions about funding and RAs and TAs. And I want to be clear from a program perspective, we do not have funding in the program. As a professional master's program, it is expected that students will self-fund. That being said, a large majority of our students that are self-funding are able to secure research assistantships or teaching assistantships that either help or fully fund their time here. Mihail is one of our teaching assistants in the core. And if you don't mind talking a little bit about what that commitment means and how that helps with your funding, that would be useful, as well as what was the process to get that.
Yes, of course. I was a self-funded student where I basically funded myself a full-time first year. It's not, at the beginning, I would like to say it's not so easy to get a TA and RA, especially at the beginning, because at the start of the program, usually it's much more easier when you spend some time at MIT, you get know with professors, and you also get know into the program. The TA, in terms of the commitments, is like up to 20 hours. I am currently at the TA at the SDM core, and it helps to fund the tuition fee, usually is in the medium level, where the rest part of your time you are spending as a teaching assistant, supporting with the course, with the program, with the assignment, supporting professors to run everything. Yeah, so I think usually the question from you is whether it is possible to have it immediately. As I mentioned, and to be honest with you, it is challenging at the very beginning, but normally most of our SDM students are having either RA or TA while being some time at MIT, because you are coming here, you have a unique background experience, which is then very well recognized. Yeah.
So the last part of that, Mikhail, is, and I'd love to have you speak to it, is, does it cover all of your costs? How far does it go?
Yeah, so it covers your full tuition, so it's help a lot, and then you have additional part of it as a salary, which then supports you with your living cost. then it really depends where you select here to live. It can cover significantly also part of your living cost, but of course might not be to the full extent. Yeah.
I think the way that I like to frame it for students is that it may not make you rich, but it'll keep you from depleting your bank account. Is I think the best way to kind of look at an RA and TA is that it's actually, in my mind, generous in terms of looking at the cost of tuition and then looking at the living stipend. And in many cases, it's healthcare as well. But again, it will not make you rich. It just will help stop you from bleeding out money on the other side. The other piece that I want to add in there is that there is no central location to find research assistantships and teaching assistantships. This is part of the reason it's a little bit more challenging to get this before you come on campus, because there's no one place to go to look at what's available. It does build on relationships. Faculty want to make sure that before they hire a student to support their class or to work in their lab, that they know them and that they trust that they're going to be able to manage the standards. And so it typically comes after you've started to build relationships here on campus. Ignacio and Amal, I know that you've been incredibly helpful in answering questions there. Are there questions outstanding that it would be good to get extra perspective from Hiro or Martina or Mihail?
All right, so I am going to improvise a little bit and buy myself some time while I think about your question. So I think an important one is the hybrid coursework and the in-person coursework. How is that navigated? Because there is a lot of talk about the flexibility of the program, whether it's completed in 1 year, 3 years, and people who are also working full-time or are in campus. I know that, for example, that Martina has lived both worlds, living away from Cambridge for a while, having to change the length of your program. So Martina, if maybe you can tell a little bit more about your experience, that could, help this question.
Yeah, I can maybe start. And so when I started the program 2021, my plan was to be distance in the US on the East Coast. And I messaged Joan 1 month in and said, I'm moving to Europe. And so I kind of had a really good job opportunity because I was working full time. And so I got flipped on another time zone. I did see a few questions about like, what time are the classes? The classes at that time were later for me for the core, but they weren't impossible. Like it wasn't unmanageable. You were probably doing some coursework in Europe in the evenings versus Eastern time. It would have been mid-afternoon, or if you're on the West Coast in the morning. So I think the program does a good job of that timing. In terms of the coursework, I think you need to be very mindful that it requires a lot of discipline, especially when you're off campus or you're remote or you're working part-time. So the way that the credits are allocated, and if it says it kind of takes 6 to 8 hours of additional homework time for this type of class, that's what it is. And you do need to commit that time. I think that's my biggest advice is if you're gonna think about doing the program hybrid, remote, either working full or part-time, make sure you negotiate and have the open conversation with your management, because you want to block out your work week to also allocate for that time. So you're not going from one meeting into a class unprepared and then into the next meeting. I think that would I lived that for a little bit, which created burnout. I would then recommend really making sure that you set aside the 13, 14 weeks to be on campus in person. Try to get away from work as much as you can if you're working part-time, because the coursework, it's not just that it's more exciting to be on campus, and you really want to take advantage of all the opportunities because you are on campus. So participate in clubs, go to the extracurricular activities, connect with students that maybe you're not doing if you're remote. So hopefully that helps answer some of the coursework perspective, Ignacio, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them as well.
I would love to throw a question over to Hiro in particular. And I think one of the things we talk about, and Martina just talked about taking advantage of being on campus and the things that are going on. Hiro, I know that you've been incredibly involved in a number of things here on campus. Do you mind just sharing some of what those opportunities are here at MIT and some of the things you've actually participated in while you're here on campus?
Yes. Since I'm focusing on product management and like a strategy for let's say automotive industry, I was part of the team of Sloan PM Club, product management club, where I could collaborate with a lot of guys who want to be PM, and like also try to open the conference for the student at MIT, where I could establish a lot of relationship with PM, let's say for Google or other companies. So that's one part I really enjoyed. The other part is I was the part of the team MIT Drive Race, where we developed the autonomous vehicle racing cars. I was particularly doing strategy role at the club. So here at MIT, we have a lot of opportunities as you explore at campus. So yeah, that is my kind of experience.
And then do you want to talk very briefly about IDJ and a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit about what that is?
Yes. So I'm leading IDJ, which is in Innovation Discovery Japan track. Also, I was co-lead for Bay Area track, where we visit a lot of cool companies at Bay Area and Japan. So I'm actually having an info session today for incoming participant. So I'm really enjoying that part of journey too.
Thanks, and thank you again for everything that you're doing. I think the richness of the time here at MIT comes from engaging in those areas. I do see a hand up from Daisuke. Do you feel free to unmute and ask a question?
Thank you for a good opportunity today. And I'm Daisuke Tsukamoto. I'm working Ministry of Trade and Economy, Trade and Industry in Japan. And I have a material engineering background in university days. So I have two questions. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. First, these days, MIT professors get a Nobel Prize, so it's really I will appreciate this prize and congratulations. So first, what is cultural background or what cultural differences compared to other universities? Okay, and second, I think the MIT SDM role is so important in the world because technology is advancing rapidly and there are benefits and risks. So how do you see the role of SDM courses in the world? Okay, thank you.
So I think we've got a great panel here and Ignacio as well with having spent time in Europe. But I would point, initially to Hiro, Mihail, and potentially Ignacio to talk about the differences between MIT and global universities, because I think the three of you came up through universities outside the US prior to coming here. So if you want to comment on that first, that would be great. And feel free, anyone, to jump in. Go ahead, Hiro.
Yeah, so I'd say like initially before coming to MIT, I was thinking like probably like competitive culture, but once I came here, I realized this is more collaborative culture here at MIT. This is because I don't know why, but people tend to like try to understand what the culture background, the industry background as well. Also, many assignments made by doing like as a team, not individually. I think that makes the big difference compared to other universities. So I'd say MIT is very collaborative culture.
Mihail or Ignacio, do you want to add? Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I can only share the opinion from Hiro. I have the same view. So personally, I spent a lot of time in different universities across the world because I was also in my duties as a coordinator for activities within universities. And what I experienced here is a very collaborative environment, especially giving the background of people in SDM or the other program. We're all coming from different industry, different cultures, so we collaborate a lot. And even my team, when I started the remote first year, some of my first team, you were all allocated at different continents. It was actually very, very nice and very beautiful. We have to manage the time, but we support each other. We were in a different situations, some of us as families and so on. And you could experience this really, really, really well. Yeah.
What I would add, because I happen to have been last week for a few days in the Netherlands in a conference to address specifically the need for systems thinkers. This is not something that only, Google and Amazon and tech is in need of. We have government offices that are designing policy for sustainability initiatives and the allocation of taxes. That requires big picture thinking. We have people coming from nonprofit organizations who do not have the resources and the workforce necessarily to think about a very complex platform development program that's going to last 5 or 10 years. That's an organizational challenge that has technological implications. We are not the best people to say the value of what we are doing because, we are doing it. So I would say everybody has a feeling that the world becomes more and more complex. The abilities to navigate that complexity in a constructive way is something that nobody should take for granted. SDM is not a silver bullet, and we rely heavily on, as has been said, on the collaborations and the cooperation that we have with business schools, with MBA students, with people with deep specialists. We need it all. So we are just the grease that links all the what are they, gears? I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to first off give an enormous thank you to Hiro, Michal, and Martina for joining us. I know that schedules are tough, and we ask you to commit an hour. I'm happy to stay on for an extra few minutes to answer any additional questions, but thank you to all three of you for taking your time. We don't coach them on what to say. We just ask them to show up and share their experiences. So thank you so much. I know that in the chat side of things, people have, Amal Ilalim is our admissions coordinator, and I think many of you have already connected with her, but Amal has shared her email in the chat. Amal is really the best contact point for you. She'll find the right person in the team to help answer questions if you've got additional questions. Ignacio is part of the staff, so happy to throw Ignacio's out. And I know, Hiro, you also put your email out there, but I would say definitely reach out to those of us in the program. We are happy to connect you with students. We're happy to connect you with others if you've got questions that we can follow up on. With that, again, thank you, Martina, thank you, Mikhail, and thank you, Hiro. If you've got additional questions, please feel free to raise your hand and ask them directly, because at this point, it's up to scroll through the chat and make sure I get all the way through there. And if not, Amal, I think I can leave it up to you to close things out. Are we good? I just want to make sure you know that we are here. We are happy to answer questions. Our most critical goal is to make sure that you match with the right master's degree program. And so if you're considering SDM and you still have questions, please let us know. We can arrange it. We don't have a specific open house day, but if you're here in Boston and if you want to have a chance to meet up with a student and attend class, we can arrange that. Just reach out. It's done on a one-on-one basis rather than as a group kind of form submission. But with that, I'm going to say thank you all for joining. I hope this was an informative hour, and we look forward to hearing from you and hopefully get a chance to see you as an applicant in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I completely forgot that I was muted. We were still recording, and I was just saying that I was about to tell a joke, but now that I know that I was muted, it's even more ridiculous. So don't mind me.
There's 20 people left if you still want to tell your joke.
No, I mean, the joke apparently was that I made a mistake, and now it's recorded for posterity. So this is actually going to end up in this is the kind of thing that people from the New York Times finds. They find 10, 20 years down the road,
We'll keep it, Ignacio. We'll make sure we keep this on file.
I hope I don't do anything so wrong that I end up in the Wall Street Journal front page.
I don't think so. All right, I'm gonna log off. Thank you so much.
All right, see you, everybody.